Welcome to Hulme, Manchester, and it's Joy Division territory, and that was affectionately known as Joy Division Bridge, or Epping Walk Bridge if you prefer. But that is the famous bridge from the 1979 Joy Division photo shoot on the 6th of January, I believe. It was shot right up there on a snowy morning. And all these buildings surrounding the bridge are new and weren't here in 1979. Practically everything that was here, the old kind of socialist, modern, Eastern European style apartment blocks have all been demolished, I think in the 90s. And most of this land around here now is Manchester University owned. Pretty much the only thing that remains is the road and the bridge. Everything else is new. I'm going to walk across this bridge now. So there was a photograph of them stood on here against the railings with the Manchester in the background. But Manchester's changed a lot since then, but they were stood about here somewhere. They could never have dared dream how much Manchester would have changed in the 40 odd years since that photograph was taken. It's completely transformed. So, I am now just heading off towards another Joy Division site. I'm just heading off towards Oxford Road and the main university area, and then heading back up towards the station, and then along the canals towards Castlefield, etc., etc., taking in a couple of historical sites along the way, Joy Division orientated sites. I mean, I'm emphasising Joy Division. I do think they are probably the best musical artists to come out of Manchester, in my opinion. I think they edge out a few others, Smiths notably. There's some bigger ones, obviously, Stone Roses, Oasis, but for me personally, I think Joy Division were the most impactful, most innovative, and most influential kind of band to come out of Manchester in that kind of post-punk period. And just that sound they made, it's just majestic, apocalyptic sound that they created here, which very much fits this city. So this whole area has just completely transformed since I was loitering around here in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, when I was in Manchester most weekends for quite a long time, you know. This university has just grown exponentially, and you know, it takes up, it's like a little city almost. The city which holds the most vivid nostalgia for me, other than my own home, is most probably the city of Manchester. Or is it Salford? Because Manchester and Salford are distinct yet interconnected twin cities, separated by the River Irwell, yet forming a single, cohesive metropolitan area. Or do they? So, that building I was just staring at was the corner house. I think it's been closed quite a while, but that was a very well revered arts venue and cinema and gallery and bookshop and all that kind of stuff for years, you know. It was a kind of institution. So I'm just heading along the canals towards the site of the old Manchester Central Station, and around the back of it, the Manchester Free Trade Hall, another legendary venue that is long gone, but I believe the facade of it is still there. Although they are immediately adjacent, Manchester is often the focal point, even though Salford holds its own city status since 1926 and is known for its deep working class culture and industrial history. Salford is sometimes considered a suburb of Manchester by outsiders, and a place you just drive through to get to the larger Manchester with its larger focus on commerce, retail and nightlife. Historically though, both cities grew from the same settlement, at a ford on the River Irwell. During the Industrial Revolution, Manchester had the title of most innovative city in the world, and both cities contributed enormously to it. Midland Hotel, for probably still is Manchester's premier hotel. So that building there is the old Manchester Free Trade Hall. Yeah, another legendary venue which is no more, it's a hotel now, mid-range Radisson maybe hotel, but that is the site of many a famous gig. I mean, Winston Churchill spoke there, Benjamin Disraeli spoke there, It's a key venue of the suffragette movement also. So very much a lecture theatre over a normal theatre. But in my opinion, it's probably most famous for being the site of two very famous concerts. One by Bob Dylan and the other by the Sex Pistols. And they were both seen as being very kind of transformative moments in the musical landscape. In 1966, it is the site of the famous Judas cry from the auditorium up towards Bobby Dylan. And the cry of Judas, which of course is a seminal moment in music history. To which he replied, "I don't believe you, you're a liar," before blasting into a very loud version of Like a Rolling Stone. It's also where the Sex Pistols also had a gig, which was a seminal moment in their history. It was seen as quite, pivotal moment. Bob Dylan, Sex Pistols, they both did the same thing, stylistically very different, but the same as well. They changed the landscape practically overnight. I mean, it is tiny. You can see that it's not very big. The venues on that 66 tour, they were old theatres mostly that had been originally designed for public speaking and weren't really equipped to deal with a rock and roll band. Long before the stadium extravaganzas that are commonplace now, anyway. Yeah, this is where it was, right there. So I think now it looks like the porch of a Radisson hotel. So yeah, I can see it's just the facade. They kept the facade, everything else is gone. Everything has its shelf life, I guess. Nothing lasts forever. So, over here is the site of another former building. It's still there. And that is Manchester Central Station. I, of course, know it as the GMEX Centre because it was the GMEX Centre when I was growing up. I saw a few concerts there in the 90s. But was obviously once, as you can probably tell, one of Manchester's main railway terminuses. I know it as the venue of one of Depeche Mode's classic gigs, concert experiences, when they played a night on their devotional tour in 1993, which I still believe now is one of the best tour productions ever created. If you haven't watched Devotional, then you ought to have. So the weather is all over the place today. Cloudy, sunny, rainy, there's a bit of everything. So far I've seen Joy Division Bridge, Manchester Free Trade Hall and Manchester Central Station, former. So I'm now just heading off to Castlefield, another former. No pedestrian access. No pedestrians. Should I heed the advice? Yeah, I think I will. I'll play by the rules. On the way to Castlefield, I'm just stopping by Little Peter Street, which is the site of the warehouse from where Joy Division filmed their Love Will Tear Us Apart video. I'm just curious to see if it's still here. So I believe this is it. I'm sure this is the site, but I'm a little bit dubious because from my research, I mean, I know that video well. The practice room where they shot that video is in an old industrial warehouse, and it had 9 windows in it, 9 or 10 windows, small windows, and I can't see a building here that's got 9 or 10 windows in it. So if I was to make a guess, I would say that the actual location, the actual room, is either not there anymore or it's different. You know, maybe it was here where the car park is now. Or maybe it was in this part of the building here, and that new facade there is a replacement for the old windows, because it, you know, you can watch it yourself. It's got 9 or 10 windows in that room, small windows, and I don't see anything that matches that here. But this is the location, this is it, this is the place. So I'm basically standing in the psychic space of where that video was shot. I later found out that the warehouse had indeed been demolished. But across the road, the boardwalk, the place where Oasis started their journey. Manchester venue, nightclub and rehearsal rooms. Yeah. Well, it was around here somewhere. So, this place here. On the left, Atlas Bar. It was Atlas Bar in the 90s as well, early 2000s. I'm amazed that's still here. It still has the same name and everything. 14-mile walk that I'm doing. I've done it twice. It's been filmed over 2 separate occasions. Jesus Christ. Let's take this. Yeah, I've filmed it twice because I'm being arty twice, because Manchester is 2 cities really, Manchester and Salford, so it only felt right that I did a walk for each. Kind of. That's a lie actually. Yeah, so I filmed the first one just before Christmas. I was meant to film more, but there was just Christmas decorations everywhere, which really annoyed me, so I figured I would come back and do it again. Film it twice. So it's the same walk done twice. So there you go. I feel so much better now that I've been honest with you. So, what I'm actually looking for around here is the site or location of the old Roman fort, which was over here somewhere. It's also the site of some quite cool photographs from the 70s. This area here. I need to carry on down here a bit for that. But right there used to be a warehouse that ran along this canal side. And this bridge here connected the 2 warehouses together. The photograph was taken somewhere around here. So I think I was here on a Tuesday last time as well. Mid-December. But it's so much busier today. So much busier. You know, last time I was here it was apocalyptic. It was a ghost town. Much more in keeping with the spirit of Manchester. I've got no idea what's going on here. Look at the state of this. much the same as it was in December.
Manchester was the world's first industrial city, serving as the heart of the 19th century textile revolution, known as Cottonopolis. It pioneered advancements like steam-powered factories, the Bridgewater Canal, and the first inner-city railway. Its rapid, often grim growth was fueled by cotton production, transforming it into a global economic powerhouse with lasting social and urban impacts.
In December though, this car park was empty.
By 1840, Manchester was the world's largest marketplace for cotton goods, with the industry driving 50% of British exports. It was a hub of innovation, hosting the first steam-powered cotton mill in 1782, the first passenger railway in 1830, and the first industrial canal in 1762.
So, right here is the site of the Roman fort, the replica. I think it's the replica, this. So, I don't think it's authentic. Some of it's authentic though. Yeah. This place, this area, is where Manchester first became a thing, became a kind of habitat. A replica or not, this is the area where Manchester started. The original settlement that would eventually become Manchester originated right here. So obviously that's a replica, obviously. So I believe there's a car park around here somewhere where some of the original Roman stonework can be found. Let's go and see what this information board says though first. So this is where Manchester began, here 1,700 years before the great industrial changes that shaped the modern castle field. The Romans built a castle in field. You are standing inside that original fort. Ditch there as well. As with Roman forts outside, there was a little settlement called Vicus. So that's what it would look like. And I'm guessing I've just walked through that area there. Over the past 100 years, archaeologists excavating in Castlefield have gradually uncovered the remains of Roman Manchester. Behind you in the Roman gardens, some of these remains have been rebuilt. These include a reconstruction of the north gate of the Roman fort and the foundations of 3 Roman buildings set outside the fort next to a Roman road. That's the road there. It still exists. So I'm coming up now to what was the North Gate. Would have been the North Gate. So I'm going to try and find some of the original stonework, which I believe is in this car park over here. But it's interesting to see how high they were, you know, because I can imagine this gate, and then I can imagine the Roman fort at Hardknott. I would say the walls are about half the height of these, which just goes to show how much of Hardknott fort still exists. So I do believe it's in this car park here where this Roman fort stone can be found, but I don't think there's any chance of me finding it. It's just a thing that's been put on a map somewhere by someone. But this is the site of the fort, no question about it.
Perhaps the most uninspiring Roman remains in Britain can be found under a railway arch, and while it is often cited as the least interesting relic, it is still the oldest slab of masonry in the whole of Manchester. Evidence from coins indicates that although the fort and civilian settlement had declined or even been abandoned by the mid-3rd century, a small garrison may have remained at Mamucium until the late 3rd century and early 4th, but this is up for debate. The fort structure, however, was largely intact right up until the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, when it was levelled as Manchester expanded, and the construction of the Rochdale Canal sliced through the south-western corner of the fort in the late 18th, early 19th centuries, and the building of viaducts over the site erased what was left.
So I'll have a mooch over here and then double back round and then take a walk along the canal side towards Old Trafford. I remember this area in the 80s, and it's, you know, it was just wasteland, you know, post-industrial wasteland, brownfield after brownfield, you know, just grim. Drunks hanging around, and there are still drunks hanging around, but it just goes to show you how much Manchester has been developed in the last 40 years. So, as a walking experience, Manchester is a bit of a mixed bag. You know, there are parts that are really lovely to walk along, like this, you know, the old canals. But the roads all streaming into Manchester are appalling places to walk. You know, as a walking experience, Manchester just was not thought out properly. Very much became orientated towards the car eventually, unfortunately for us. You know, and I mentioned the fact that Manchester is basically two cities, Manchester and Salford. But Salford very much got sacrificed. You know, much of it is just not there anymore. Because I am not joking you, half of Salford got demolished in the 70s and 80s, mostly 70s. I mean, I know this because my, you know, my links with Salford are quite big. You know, my grandparents had a fish and chip shop on Eccles New Road, which was sold in the 60s. And then, of course, there's Manchester United. Practically the only thing that connects me with my siblings, apart from our mother, you know, is talking about Manchester United. It's the only thing we talk about. So obviously we have all been depressed for 10 years. That's only joking. Got to take the rough with the smooth. I remember the 80s. Coming out here a bit, it gives you a kind of a sense of the Manchester I knew when I was a kid growing up. You know, I'm coming to Manchester all the time. So even though I was born in Blackpool, my brother's father was from Manchester. My grandparents obviously had fish and chip shop here as well, so we were here all the time. So, you know, this reminds me very much, this area, of what Manchester was like in the 80s. Kind of desolate. This area won't be desolate for long, because this whole area here is about to be developed, I think. And this is like a kind of island. It's almost an island. It's only connected by a road. It's like a peninsula. It's nearly an island, peninsula, but it's actually got an interesting history, this little piece of real estate. recall, this little island here, well, long, thin island, used to be the site of, like, it was kind of a carnival site for industrial workers. So it's like a big carnival circus location. I think there was a spa here. So it was like a kind of little holiday destination for the workers. I mean, you would never know from looking at that. But they have started these 3 new apartment blocks here. I'm sure I have put the plans on screen by now. So maybe the next time I walk down here, it will be completely transformed. And all of this area here, to my right, will be kind of high-rise apartment blocks. More high-rise apartment blocks. Coming into view now is the Colosseum. Not quite, but it is a theatre of dreams. This is the Old Trafford football stadium. There's the stadium over there. Whatever they do with it, it does need massively redeveloping. It needs $1 billion spending on it at the very least. Because it is looking pretty tired now. And from what I've heard, architecturally, it's not fit for purpose. Those extensions were very much kind of bodge-on extensions just to increase the capacity of the stadium. It's not really sustainable. And like I said earlier, everything has its shelf life. Nothing lasts forever. So I don't feel the need to go any closer to the stadium. The new stadium plans are bold, audacious, but Manchester United should be bold and audacious. So I don't need to get too close to the stadium itself. I'm going up towards the old entrance to the old docks in the Manchester Ship Canal, and kind of heading into central Salford, even more than I am in now. But that right there is the Manchester Ship Canal, and what a story that has. Really, the great rivalry between Manchester United and Liverpool, I won't say starts with the Manchester Ship Canal, but it's a major part of why Manchester United and Liverpool hate each other. So all of this here to my left is the old Manchester docks, and just up here, this white building is next to the old main entrance to those docks. This was the kind of admin entrance. Dock office is a dock office building here, one of the only buildings that still remains. Again, this is completely all unrecognisable from what it was. But that right there was the main entrance to Manchester Docks. Salford Docks, if you prefer. Right there. Now it's just kind of part of a wall. Is it? Can't see the docks from here because they've all been built on, but they're there. We're going to take a closer look at them now. Now this obviously just scratches the surface. It's a massive site. Such a historical part of Manchester. The old docks. It's not a very nice place to walk around, in my opinion, this part of Manchester. It doesn't have any of the charm of like some of the other parts, Castlefield and further in. It should do really, you know, it's just not been thought out. You know, it's such a massive area this, you could build a whole other city here. You know, it's got that kind of crappy 1990s postmodern style aesthetic to it. It's just, yeah. So, it's the old Manchester Docks, next to the old Manchester Ship Canal. So now I'm just kind of heading towards the old area, Chapel Street and Oldfields Road and the old kind of Hobson's Choice areas of Salford. So just over here, this church spire is all that remains of the Salford community where my grandparents' fish and chip shop was. As I was saying earlier, you know, Salford was knocked down essentially to make way for these kind of dual carriageways, so that the flow of traffic could get into central Manchester quicker. Yeah. You can't build 6-lane streets on top of 2-lane streets, so they had to go. But I'm walking on now what was a row of shops, and there was a pub here on the left somewhere. And just here is the old church. And all that's left of it is the spire. But yeah, I can hear my granddad's voice now ringing in my ears. Oh, there's nothing left of it. See that church, Mark? That's the only thing that's left. This was all streets. It was all streets around here. Streets, houses, terraced houses, shops, pubs. Yeah, so the church would have come out here to here, and the pavement would have been over there somewhere. The original 2-lane road going off down there. 2 lanes, not 6. Stands alone as a kind of solitary monument to what was. giant roundabout complex. I mean, look at the size of it. Look how much land that takes up. When originally this would have just been a crossroads, four-way crossroads. The road going down here, straight down there, and then the other one going straight across. And this is why I said earlier that Manchester is a pretty horrible place to walk around in some areas. So this is Eccles New Road, and just down here somewhere was the location of my grandparents' fish and chip shop. But I'm not sure if the actual building is there anymore. I think it's gone. It's gone. This was all rows of streets, row after row after row of terraced houses, all gone. You know, maybe it was here, who knows. All I know is that it was very close to that church. So if we head off towards Salford Lads Club, you'll find some housing there that is vaguely reminiscent of what was here. Although the terraced housing around Salford Lads Club is quite nice. There's a reason why they kept it. The housing around here, the rows of housing around here was a little bit more generic, shall we say. And all of this was just a big long row of kind of Victorian housing with shops, and I'm sure it was there somewhere. It was there somewhere. It's exhausting just listening to it. Horrendous, awful place to walk around this. Fucking awful. Builder's warehouse, self-storage. This used to be a proper working class community with character. Jumpers for goalposts, all that stuff. Now it's a motorway. So just round here is Salford Lads Club. It's got scaffolding on it. But right next to Salford Lads Club is Coronation Street, the original Coronation Street. And the true life inspiration for the soap opera of the same name. So this is Coronation Street, the original Coronation Street. Yeah, but they're lovely, aren't they? These are 3 stories, these. All the ones that got bulldozed were 2 stories, obviously. Not worth saving, apparently. But yeah, gives you more of an idea of what Salford used to look like in terms of its housing. Very nice. I mean, if you look at the houses in Coronation Street, the soap, not that one. If you look at those houses, that's what Salford was actually like, you know. That's what all these streets were like around here, which got bulldozed in the 60s and 70s mostly. I remember Tony Wilson talking about Detroit and what happened to Detroit, and being compared to Manchester, and he said that Manchester was fucking worse than Detroit, and it was. So, okay, I'm going to head to kind of the old area of St Bartholomew's, or St Bart's, which is an old school. Oh, this is nice. Nice. Not Victorian, obviously. Yeah, so going to have a look at the area of St Bartholomew's, or St Bart's, and Tatton Street, and the old heartland of Salford, and where they shot some of Hobson's Choice there. So. That was Salford Lads Club, synonymous obviously with the Smiths. There you go. This is more like what you would have found in Salford. It's lovely though, isn't it? And they just bulldozed it all. In favour of roads. Oh. Hello, pussycat. So all this is very much a hint of what old Salford used to be, especially there. So I believe this area to my right, these allotments, is the site of the old St Bart's school. It was here. And some of the old houses there. The next minute or so you'll see some old photographs of this street and how it once was. So in Hobson's Choice, John Mills, Will Mossop's, is walking down here, this street, Tatton Street. This is Tatton Street. Just down here was where the camera would have been. Filming John Mills was Will Mossop walking along this street here. Coming back. That was it there, yeah. Right there. Funnily enough, he was walking down here to Oldfield Road in the film, where he was opening his new shop on Oldfield Road, and that is where I'm going as well next. I mean, it doesn't look much, this area, but you know, it's very familiar. This is the kind of areas I grew up in. You know, and they look the same in every town. So, I'm walking down Oldfield Road, where Will Mossop has his shop, opens his shop. In the Harold Bridge House play, Hobson's Choice, which is a kind of Cinderella type fairy tale story that was updated for kind of late Victorian tastes. I think it was early 20th century actually, it was actually written. But, you know, the classic version of Hobson's Choice for me is the David Lean version from the 50s, starring the great Charles Lawton, one of the greatest actors to ever do it. So Oldfield Road was considered a downgrade as a shopping street from Chapel Street, which is where Henry Hobson had his shop. No, and Chapel Street itself was considered inferior to St Anne's Square, which is where they all aspired to open a cobbler's, St Anne's Square in Manchester. And you know, Henry Hobson is trying to get clientele from St Anne's Square, one of the posh shops in St Anne's Square, and does so because he has a very talented cobbler called Will Mossop. But Will Mossop eventually opens his shop on Oldfield Road, and this is Oldfield Road here. So Maggie, Henry Hobson's eldest daughter, basically demands that Will Mossop marry her and go into partnership with her, because her father considers her too old to get married, and shelved, as the saying goes. She was shelved. So Maggie's like, shelved? I'm not having that. Not on your Nelly. So she basically cajoles Will Mossop into becoming her life partner, because although he is a genius cobbler, that's about all he can do. He's pretty useless at everything else. Maggie is the business brain, and Maggie has been running her father's shop properly for years, and you know, she's the real brains in the family. So Hobson's Choice, as well as being a kind of Cinderella type fairy tale, modern interpretation of it, it's also a kind of feminist, seen as a feminist kind of play. But you know, those women like Maggie, they were around. You know, I've been brought up in a working class environment, you know, and I know those women, and I know that those women were always there. I do believe things were just a little bit more balanced than what we are led to believe. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, this whole area is, again, transformed. All of this was just brownfield site after brownfield site growing up, because we used to drive into Manchester from Blackpool and we'd go down here, down Chapel Street. And this whole area was behind kind of barbed wire fences, and it was just derelict land, you know. So there is the original Salford Royal Hospital. And when I was a kid, it was still a hospital, as I recall, and now I think it's just flats. But I distinctly remember the NHS signs on it, as I used to drive down here. And this is Chapel Street, the famous Chapel Street. So this balcony area next to the park is one of the few giveaways that it was shot in the 1950s, because all the cast and the extras are wearing their Sunday finery, their Victorian finery, but Maggie walks across some tarmac to get to the park. Of course, tarmac was a 20th century invention, early 20th century invention, and was not around in Victorian times. So it's a bit of a, yeah, you know, she's walking across wearing a petticoat, and she's walking across some asphalt, so it's a bit jarring. I'm surprised that David Lean did that, actually, because he's such a perfectionist. So, there we are. Salford Uni. Yeah, so obviously this building was not here in the early 50s when the film was shot, mid-50s I think it was, 53 or 54 maybe. So I'm going to go around this way because I'm trying to get to the steps area. Walking on the grass, hope I don't get arrested. Security guards come and wrestle me to the ground. But this here, to my right, I'll be able to, yeah, where those benches are, all this is where this balcony area to Peel Park was, just here. So right in front of me here, where is where Maggie walked across to these steps here, and Will Mossop stood at the bottom of them. So I believe it used to be a bit higher than this as well. She walks across here and comes to these steps, which would have been, at the time, over here. Yeah, this is it. So the steps used to come from here where I'm stood, and they used to go down there. Down there straight and meet those other steps. And down at the bottom is where John Mills was standing, waiting for Maggie. But the park looks remarkably the same. But yep, all here, all this was the balcony area with benches and blah blah blah. So let's go down. Let's go down. The steps would have carried on up there to there. Let's just picture John Mills for a moment. Let's go. So John Mills was stood right there. And it's a lovely film. If you haven't seen it, you ought to have seen it. Here we go. Peel Park. Right here is where he was stood, looking up, waiting for Maggie there. So what Maggie and Will do is they go off and they sit by the River Irwell, somewhere over here. Somewhere over here. Quite like this her umbrella pointing thing. So I'm going to try and find the spot where they might have sat. I'm sure it's completely changed now. Of course, even in 1950s, apart from the odd bit of Victorian tarmac, aside from that, Manchester and Salford still very much looked like a Lowry painting. You know? Chimneys everywhere, chimney stacks, hundreds of them as far as the eye can see. I think it was like that right the way up to the kind of 60s. And then the 70s came and it just got so somewhere down there is where they shot. Well, it's obviously all been completely remodeled now. But that's it. In terms of actual filming locations for Hobson's Choice, that's it, because most of it was filmed at Shepperton, I think. So, back on Chapel Street now, and I'll head along Chapel Street all the way back into the centre of Manchester. This is the old centre of Salford.
Bexley Square is the historic heart of Salford, and the town hall served as the magistrates' court for 171 years. The square is also the site of the Battle of Bexley Square, but that is a tale for another time.
I think that is basically the monument to it. Yeah, that's the place. Down here on the right is a pub where George Best used to frequent quite often. I think it's the Brown Bull, I think it is. The Brown Bull.
My mother has maintained her entire adult life that George Best was the most gifted footballer she has ever seen. And you should always trust a mother's gut.
So that there is the site of what I think is the old Brown Bull pub, where George Best used to hang out. I mean, it's obviously been chopped up into smaller units, but yeah, he frequented it a lot because it's just down the road from his old boutiques.
The old Salford police station, on the edge of the Greengate area where the Salford Cross once stood, is renowned for being the centre of medieval Salford. But that's another story. Chapel Street, the first ever street in the UK lit by gas in 1806, the cultural soul of the city of Salford, maybe even the most working class street of any city, and the gateway from Salford to Manchester and Manchester to Salford.
Looks like we're about to get a bit of a rain pour. Here comes the rain by the looks of it. So about 20 years ago, that was a very posh bar. Yeah, so that was the swankiest bar in Manchester at one time. And the entrance was up there. We used to go down. We used to cross all this. It was kind of one of the first kind of swanky canal side bars in Manchester. I mean, it was swanky once. You'll just have to trust me. But, you know, all that stuff behind it, none of it was there. All this build, there was nothing. It was like a little bar on its own. Nothing behind it except the railway bridge. All new. I mean, you know, Manchester and Salford are, you know, two cities, but it's still one city as well. It's a bit, instead of like two separate cities that are next to each other, it's a bit more like Berlin, whereas it's one city, kind of divided in two. But there isn't a Berlin Wall here. The wall is this. The River Irwell. So this is St Anne's Square, where Will Mossop and Henry Hodgson want to be.
The Northern Quarter is Manchester's primary creative and independent district. Known for its bohemian atmosphere, the area is defined by a dense network of cobbled streets filled with independent shops, alternative bars, and vibrant street art. Originally the city's rag trade district, many of its former textile mills and warehouses have been converted into apartments and creative spaces. I, myself, at one time, could be found loitering there, frequenting Pop Boutique, Affleck's Palace, and watching gigs at night and day. Culture was probably the last great export of Britain, and guitar music was a staple of northern cities like Manchester and Liverpool. Guitars historically served as an accessible, portable musical instrument for the working class, and by the 1830s, guitars became a popular, affordable option for the underclass and labouring poor, offering a harmonic alternative to expensive pianos. They were readily available at markets and in pawnbrokers. Since the early 2000s, however, guitar bands have largely been eradicated by the shifting tastes of the culture. Noel Gallagher has argued that the rising cost of gear and the, in his view, increasing privatisation of the music industry has made it difficult for non-privileged musicians and the working class youth to succeed.
So, considering the way the music industry is now, I literally cannot believe that is still there. Incredible. So up there, across the road, is Piccadilly Station, which means that my walk is almost done. And it's been a little longer than I anticipated. More than 14 miles anyway. I'll have to add it up later. But yep, in about 45 minutes I will jump on a train and head back